My daughter? No, she's just a guest. The coward who abandoned her squad, my dad mocked, gesturing toward me in front of the entire engagement party. My sister giggled, clinging to the arm of her wealthy, high-achieving fiancé, a decorated Navy SEAL commander. The room chuckled, pitying the outcast daughter. My father thought introducing me as a dishonorable failure would destroy my dignity forever. The SEAL commander politely stepped forward and extended his hand, flashing a confident, patronizing smile, until his eyes dropped to my sleeve. As my wrist shifted under the chandelier light, revealing a jagged, distinct battle scar, the color drained instantly from his face. His hand began to tremble, his confident smile vanishing into pure terror. He froze in absolute shock, slowly snapping into a rigid, trembling military salute, and stuttered, "Ma'am, are you the Black Panther of the Marine Corps?" Suddenly, the entire room went dead silent. The heavy wrought iron gates of the estate groaned as I pushed them open, a sound that felt entirely too fitting for a homecoming 20 years in the making. My name is Valerie. I am 33 years old, and as I walked down the long, manicured gravel driveway of my family's property, I felt like a ghost, haunting a life I was never allowed to truly own. The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of expensive catering and white roses, my sister Chloe's absolute favorite. It was her engagement party tonight, a lavish affair funded entirely by our father's endless corporate fortune. For as long as I could remember, Chloe had been the golden child, the perfect daughter who followed every rule and smiled for every family photograph. I, on the other hand, was the runner, the rebel who chose a path of secrecy, grit, and discipline over the comfortable, silver spoon destiny my father had laid out for me. When I left home years ago, my father didn't shed a tear. Instead, he carefully crafted a narrative to shield his precious social standing. As I approached the grand double doors of the mansion, the muffled sound of classical music and clinking champagne glasses drifted out into the night. Taking a deep breath, I adjusted the cuffs of my tailored black jacket, stepping inside. Instantly, the warmth of the grand foyer hit me, along with something much colder, the sudden, suffocating weight of judgmental whispers. Heads turned in slow motion. Relatives I hadn't seen in a decade glanced at me with synthetic sympathy, their eyes burning into my skin. They didn't see a sister returning to celebrate a milestone. Thanks to the malicious lies spun by my father, they saw a broken, dishonorable failure. A coward who had allegedly abandoned her responsibilities and fled the family in deep, unspoken shame. I navigated through the sea of silk dresses and tailored tuxedos, each step echoing against the marble floors. At the far end of the ballroom, standing on a slightly raised dais, was my father. He looked exactly as he always did, immaculate, imposing, and entirely devoid of genuine warmth. Beside him stood Chloe, radiating the smug satisfaction of someone who had never had to fight for a single thing in her life. The moment my father's sharp eyes locked onto me, the practiced smile on his face shifted into something venomous. He tapped his microphone, the sharp feedback instantly cutting through the ambient chatter of the room. "Everyone, if I could have your attention for a brief moment," my father announced, his voice booming with forced authority. "We have an unexpected arrival tonight." He gestured loosely toward me, a patronizing smirk playing on his lips. "My daughter? No, she's just a guest, the coward who abandoned her squad, returning to see what real success looks like." A ripple of cruel, quiet chunks passed through the crowd. Chloe giggled softly, leaning closer to the stage. I stood perfectly still under the burning glare of 100 judgmental eyes, my posture rigid, holding on to a deep, quiet strength they couldn't begin to comprehend. I looked directly at the audience, letting the silence stretch before addressing them with absolute calm. I stood there, watching my own bloodline disown me. Follow my story until the end to see the look on his face, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story of justice has reached. They believed they were destroying my dignity, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit them. The quiet murmurs of the crowd died down as my father confidently gestured toward the side of the stage. But tonight isn't about past disappointments, he boomed, his voice instantly shifting into a tone of immense pride. Tonight, we welcome a man of true honor into our family. A man who understands the meaning of duty, sacrifice, and elite leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, my future son-in-law, Navy SEAL Commander Garrett Vance. The ballroom erupted into enthusiastic applause. From the wings of the stage, a man stepped forward, drawing every eye in the room. Garrett wore a tailored charcoal suit that couldn't quite hide his rigid military frame. He carried himself with the unmistakable, absolute arrogance of a man who was used to being the most powerful person in any room he entered. Chloe instantly beamed, wrapping her arm tightly around his, looking up at him as if he were a king. My father beamed, stepping down from the dais to lead Garrett directly toward me, deliberately using the decorated officer as a tool to finalize my public humiliation. Garrett, I know you appreciate real discipline, my father said loudly, ensuring the nearby guests could hear every word. I want you to meet Chloe's older sister, Valerie. I'm afraid she didn't possess an ounce of the grit you see in the special forces. She broke under pressure and walked away when things got tough. Garrett looked down his nose at me, his eyes scanning my plain black jacket with a cold, patronizing pity. He extended a hand, offering a lazy, tight smile. A pleasure, he said smoothly, completely unaware of who I really was. The silence between us felt heavy as Garrett's extended hand hung in the air. The surrounding guests watched with smirks on their faces, waiting for me to shrink away in shame, to cower under the gaze of a decorated Navy SEAL commander. But I didn't move. I simply looked into Garrett's eyes, seeing the casual superiority swimming within them. Slowly, deliberately, I raised my right arm to accept his handshake. As I did, the movement caused the cuff of my tailored black jacket to pull back slightly, shifting under the intense glare of the overhead crystal chandelier. There, etched deeply into the pale skin of my wrist, was a thick, jagged, and highly distinct shrapnel scar. It wasn't a standard injury. It was the unmistakable signature mark left by a customized explosive device used only in deep, hostile territories. A mark known intimately by anyone operating at the highest echelons of special warfare. Garrett's hand closed around mine, but the moment his thumb brast against the raised tissue of the scar, his entire body went completely rigid. His eyes dropped to my wrist, locking onto the mark. I watched the casual, patronizing smirk vanish from his face in a fraction of a second. The healthy color drained from his skin, leaving him an ash-gray color as his chest heaved. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. His fingers began to tremble against mine, and a look of absolute, unadulterated terror overtook his features. The proud SEAL commander, the man my father had just praised as an unstoppable force, looked as though he had just seen a ghost. He took a sharp step back, his eyes darting from the scar on my wrist up to my face, realizing the unimaginable truth. The woman standing before him wasn't a dishonorable outcast or a coward who ran from her squad. He froze in shock, snapping his posture into a rigid, trembling military salute, and stuttered out the words that shattered the room's illusion. "Ma'am, are you the Black Panther of the Marine Corps?" The entire ballroom descended into a suffocating, breathless silence. The clinking of champagne glasses ceased instantly as every eye locked onto Garrett, who remained snapped at a flawless, unwavering military attention. My father's confident grin froze, his mouth opening slightly but producing no sound. Chloe's eyes darted frantically between her fiancé and me, her face twisting into a mask of pure confusion. She reached out, her manicured hand tugging sharply at Garrett's sleeve. "Garrett, honey, what on earth are you doing?" Chloe laughed nervously, her voice echoing uncomfortably in the quiet room. "You're saluting my sister. She's a failure, remember? Stop joking around, everyone is watching." My father stepped forward, clearing his throat aggressively to break the tension. "Garrett, please. You've clearly mistaken Valerie for someone else. She was a low-level dropout who fled under shameful circumstances. Lower your hand." "Sir, shut your mouth!" Garrett roared, his booming voice shattering the room's upper-class decorum. He didn't break his salute, keeping his eyes locked onto mine with absolute, unwavering reverence. "You have no idea who you are talking to. This woman is a black operations legend. She is a highly decorated colonel who led the elite Phantom Division. During a classified joint task ambush in hostile territory, when my own platoon was entirely cut off and surrounded, it was the Black Panther who defied direct retreat orders, broke through enemy lines alone, and single-handedly brought my men home alive." Garrett turned to the horrified crowd, his voice shaking with intense emotion. "The story you were told is a grotesque lie. She didn't run from a squad. She sacrificed her own safety, took shrapnel to the wrist, and saved an entire unit of Navy SEALs. You are standing in the presence of a national hero." A collective gasp swept through the ballroom as Garrett's words hung heavily in the air. The pristine, untouchable facade my father had spent decades building began to crack and crumble right before our eyes. His face twisted from supreme arrogance into a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. He took a frantic step back, looking around the room at the wealthy business associates and local elites who were now glaring at him with intense disgust and absolute horror. The whispers started up again, but this time, the venom was aimed entirely at him. James Mitchell, my trusted legal representative who had been quietly monitoring the room from the shadows, stepped forward and opened his briefcase. He pulled out a stack of authenticated medical releases, military records, and financial statements, laying them flat on a nearby table. "The truth is far worse than a simple lie," Mitchell announced, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "Your father didn't just fabricate this story to protect his social standing. He used Valerie's highly classified status to intercept her high-tier military savings and combat injury payouts." The room went completely breathless. Mitchell pointed directly at my father. "He took advantage of her strict non-disclosure agreements, assuming she could never legally speak out to defend herself. He stole millions from his own daughter while publicly branding her a coward." Chloe burst into tears, her hands shaking as she looked at her ruined family. The very people who had smirked at me minutes ago now turned their backs on my father, completely disgusted by his horrific cruelty and illegal deceit. My father staggered backward against the edge of the stage, his chest heaving as he looked around at the wall of cold, accusatory faces. He reached out a trembling hand toward me, his voice reduced to a desperate, pathetic whisper. "Valerie, please, we can fix this. We're a family. Think of the business. Think of our reputation." I looked at him, feeling absolutely nothing but a profound sense of finality. "You should have thought about family before you stole from a soldier," I said, my voice cutting through the room with absolute composure. I turned my back on him, refusing to offer a single shred of unearned mercy to save him from the social and legal ruin he had built for himself. Beside me, Garrett looked at Chloe, slowly shaking his head in deep disgust. He pulled his hand away from her grasp, making it clear he would never marry into a family built on such horrific dishonor. Walking out of that suffocating mansion, the crisp night air felt cleaner than it ever had before. I left behind the lies, the greed, and the toxic legacy of a broken family, stepping into a future that belonged entirely to me. Now, I am curious about you, who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever had to face betrayal from your own bloodline? Comment below. And meanwhile, I am leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.